Surrounded by narcissists. Have you ever encountered someone who seems utterly captivated by their own reflection, both literally and figuratively? Perhaps a colleague who dominates every conversation with tales of their own brilliance, or a friend who somehow transforms your good news into a story about themselves. These behaviors, which might have once been dismissed as mere vanity or poor social skills, are increasingly recognized as part of a broader pattern that psychologists call narcissism. This exploration delves into one of the most misunderstood yet prevalent personality patterns of our time. We'll uncover how to identify genuine narcissistic behavior versus normal self-confidence, understand the psychological mechanisms that drive such extreme self-focus, and most importantly, learn practical strategies for protecting ourselves when we encounter these individuals. Along the way, we'll examine how our culture itself may be nurturing narcissistic tendencies and discover why recognizing these patterns has become an essential life skill in our interconnected world. What is narcissism? Clinical signs and behavioral patterns. Narcissism takes its name from the Greek myth of Narcissus, a beautiful youth who fell in love with his own reflection and wasted away gazing at it. This ancient story captures something timeless about human nature, but modern psychology has given us much more precise tools for understanding this complex personality pattern. True narcissism goes far beyond ordinary self-confidence or even vanity. Clinical narcissists exhibit a constellation of behaviors that form a recognizable pattern. They maintain an unrealistic, grandiose self-image that doesn't match reality, often believing themselves to be exceptionally talented or important without evidence to support these beliefs. They speak primarily about themselves, steering conversations back to their own experiences and achievements with remarkable consistency. What makes narcissists particularly challenging to deal with is their profound sensitivity to criticism combined with their tendency to judge others harshly. They feel entitled to special treatment and believe that normal rules don't apply to them. This creates a one-way relationship dynamic where they expect constant acknowledgement and admiration while offering little genuine empathy in return. The key distinction lies in understanding that narcissism isn't simply loving yourself too much. People with healthy self-esteem can accept criticism, celebrate others' successes, and maintain genuine relationships. Narcissists, however, are trapped in a psychological prison where their self-worth depends entirely on external validation, making them simultaneously grandiose and remarkably fragile. Perhaps, most importantly, narcissism exists on a spectrum. While clinical narcissistic personality disorder affects only 1 to 2% of the population, narcissistic traits and behaviors are much more common, especially in our current cultural moment, where self-promotion has become increasingly normalized and even necessary for success. The psychology of narcissistic manipulation and control. Understanding how narcissists operate psychologically is crucial for recognizing their influence in our lives. Unlike simple rudeness or selfishness, narcissistic manipulation follows predictable patterns that exploit fundamental human needs for connection, approval, and stability. These individuals are often remarkably skilled at identifying and targeting our deepest vulnerabilities. The manipulation typically begins with what psychologists call love bombing, an intense shower of attention, flattery, and apparent devotion that can feel intoxicating to the recipient. The narcissist studies their target carefully during this phase, learning about their fears, dreams, and weak points. This information becomes ammunition for later use when the honeymoon period inevitably ends. One of their most effective tools is arbitrary feedback, giving praise and criticism in unpredictable patterns that keep their victims constantly off balance. Today, you might be told you're wonderful and special. Tomorrow, the same person treats you with cold indifference. This creates an addictive cycle where the victim works harder and harder to regain that initial high of approval, never realizing that the inconsistency is intentional. Narcissists also excel at a technique called gaslighting, where they systematically make their victims question their own memory and perception of reality. They might deny saying something they clearly said, or claim events happened differently than they actually did. Over time, this erodes the victim's confidence in their own judgment, making them increasingly dependent on the narcissist's version of reality. The psychological impact of these techniques can be devastating. Victims often report feeling anxious, confused, and emotionally exhausted. They may lose touch with their own needs and desires, becoming so focused on managing the narcissist's reactions that they forget who they used to be. Understanding these patterns is the first step toward breaking free from their influence. Breaking free strategies for dealing with narcissists. Escaping the grip of a narcissist requires both emotional strength and practical strategies. The most important principle is recognizing that you cannot change, cure, or reason with a true narcissist. Their behavior patterns are deeply ingrained and serve psychological functions that they're unwilling to give up. The first critical step is creating distance whenever possible. If the narcissist is a coworker, minimize interactions to strictly professional matters. If it's a family member, limit contact, and never engage in emotional discussions about the relationship. Physical and emotional distance provides the breathing room necessary to regain your perspective and emotional equilibrium. When direct confrontation becomes necessary, focus on specific behaviors rather than character judgments. Instead of saying you're selfish, try, when you interrupt me repeatedly, I feel unheard. Avoid using terms like narcissist or psychopath, which will only trigger defensive rage. Keep your language concrete and your boundaries clear. One of the most powerful tools is what psychologists call the broken record technique. When a narcissist tries to manipulate you into doing something, simply repeat your position calmly and consistently. Don't provide lengthy explanations or justifications, as these only give them more material to argue with. A simple "I need time to think about that" repeated as many times as necessary can be remarkably effective. Perhaps most importantly, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong in the relationship, it probably is. Narcissists are skilled at making their victims doubt their own perceptions, but your emotional responses are valuable information. Don't let anyone convince you that your completely normal reactions to abnormal treatment are somehow the real problem. Breaking free may be difficult, but it's essential for reclaiming your mental health and authentic sense of self. Narcissistic culture. How society enables self-obsession. We live in an era that seems uniquely designed to nurture narcissistic tendencies. Social media platforms reward self-promotion and create endless opportunities for comparison with others. The rise of influencer culture has made celebrity out of self-absorption, while reality television celebrates dramatic, attention-seeking behavior that would have been considered deeply problematic just a generation ago. This cultural shift represents more than just changing fashions in entertainment. We're witnessing the normalization of behaviors that were once recognized as unhealthy. Children grow up wearing shirts that say princess or boss. Parents ask 3-year-olds to choose the family's dinner menu, and young people are encouraged to believe they're uniquely special without developing the skills or character to back up such claims. The self-esteem movement, while well-intentioned, may have inadvertently contributed to this problem. Research suggests that simply telling people they're wonderful doesn't improve their performance or happiness. In fact, students who received regular self-esteem boosting messages often performed worse than those who were simply given their assignments without additional ego stroking. True confidence comes from genuine achievement and competence, not from empty praise. Social media amplifies these tendencies by creating artificial environments where everyone presents their best, most successful, most attractive selves. Young people compare their ordinary daily reality to everyone else's highlight reel, creating impossible standards and encouraging increasingly desperate attempts to stand out. The result is a generation that's simultaneously more confident in their self-assessments and less capable of handling criticism or failure than previous generations. This cultural narcissism has serious implications beyond individual relationships. When entire groups adopt narcissistic patterns, demanding special recognition, refusing to tolerate criticism, viewing disagreement as attack, the result is the kind of toxic political and social discourse that characterizes much of our current moment. Understanding these broader patterns helps us recognize how individual psychology and cultural trends reinforce each other. Building healthy relationships and personal boundaries. The antidote to narcissistic culture isn't self-hatred or excessive humility, but rather the cultivation of genuine confidence based on real competence and authentic connection with others. Healthy relationships require what narcissists fundamentally cannot provide: the ability to see others as complete human beings with their own needs, feelings, and perspectives. Building strong personal boundaries is perhaps the most crucial skill for navigating a world where narcissistic behavior is increasingly common. This means learning to say no without elaborate justifications, trusting your emotional responses even when others question them, and maintaining your own values rather than constantly adapting to others' demands. Healthy boundaries aren't walls that keep everyone out, but rather gates that you control. Authentic self-confidence develops through what psychologists call mastery experiences, gradually building competence in areas that matter to you. Unlike narcissistic grandiosity, which is based on fantasy and comparison with others, real confidence comes from knowing you can handle challenges because you've successfully navigated similar situations before. This kind of confidence doesn't require constant external validation because it's rooted in actual capability. In relationships, look for reciprocity, the natural give and take that characterizes healthy connections. Healthy people can celebrate your successes without making them about themselves, offer support during difficult times without keeping score, and engage in genuine conversation where both parties contribute and listen. They can acknowledge their mistakes, apologize when appropriate, and work toward mutually beneficial solutions when conflicts arise. Perhaps most importantly, cultivating meaning and purpose beyond yourself provides natural protection against narcissistic tendencies. When you're genuinely invested in something larger than your own ego, whether it's family, work, community, or creative expression, the constant need for admiration and attention naturally diminishes. The goal isn't to eliminate self-focus entirely, but to balance it with genuine care and connection to the wider world. Conclusion: the rise of narcissistic behavior in our culture represents one of the most significant psychological challenges of our time, affecting not just individual relationships, but the fabric of society itself. By understanding the difference between healthy self-confidence and pathological self-obsession, we can better navigate our interactions and protect our own mental well-being. The key insight is that true strength and happiness come not from grandiose self-regard, but from the harder work of building genuine competence, maintaining authentic relationships, and contributing to something beyond ourselves. As we move forward, the crucial questions become: how can we maintain healthy self-esteem without falling into narcissistic patterns? How do we teach children to value themselves appropriately while also developing empathy and consideration for others? And perhaps most importantly, how do we create a culture that rewards genuine achievement and authentic connection rather than mere self-promotion and attention-seeking? The answers to these questions may well determine whether our society moves toward greater wisdom and compassion or continues down the path of increasing isolation and self-obsession.